Okay, this is going to be the wooest video I have put up to date, probably. I had a big in my reading after my meditation last night. I called my sister. He was like, oh, have we stumbled upon the same Neptune, right? The planet of dreams, inspiration, spirituality. It has been in its home, Pisces, the sign of dreams, creativity, empathy, spirituality. So when we think of Saturn, we think of like boundaries, authority, and rule, okay? With Neptune, though, there's this dissolvement of the boundaries. There's a dissolvement of oneness. The boundaries get really murky. This is what Wordsworth wrote about Neptune. Our destiny, our being's heart and home is with infantitude and only there. These words, written by a great English romantic poet, encapsulate the essence of Neptune, the desire to go beyond the sense of being a separate self and to merge with something greater. Although we often speak of finding ourselves, that is, of discovering our unique identity or defining ourselves through self-chosen attributes and achievements, Neptune is the opposite. It is the urge to lose ourselves, to dissolve or transcend the boundaries of the isolated ego. But before we can comprehend what dissolving or transcending the ego entails, we should recall the ego. Briefly defined, ego is the sense of ourselves as a separate individual. In other words, our sense of I. Being an I means we can define ourselves. We are this, but not that. We end somewhere and other people begin somewhere else. However, we are not born with an ego or sense of I in the womb. We are unaware of ourselves as separate. We are at one with Mother. Mother is the whole world to us. Therefore, we think we are the whole world. We think we are everything and experience what Freud called an oceanic sense of reality. Gradually, after birth, however, we begin to differentiate and distinguish ourselves not only from Mother, but also from environment as well. We grow to recognize that we are distinct or separate from other people and things around us. There is self and there is not self. Not only do we distinguish ourselves from other people, but we also come to identify ourselves with certain parts of our personality and nature at the same time as denying or splitting off from other parts of our own psyche. In other words, in addition to the self and others split, a boundary or division also exists between our ego, our sense of who we are, and other facets of our nature, which we won't acknowledge as belonging to ourselves or which we don't even know there are. For instance, we might identify with that part of us, which is love, kind, and loving, and deny or repress that part, which is negative and destructive. In this way, the I, not I split involves not only drawing a line between ourselves and others, it is also dividing our wholeness into two parts. What we are conscious of and willing to identify as being in us versus what we are unconscious of or unwilling to admit a part of us. Neptune is a boundary dissolver, and by transit, Neptune blurs or dissolves the boundary between ourselves and others. Neptune transiting the sun, for instance, we're in a sextile. Transit could have a time when we lose ourselves in another person or have experiences of our oneness with all life. But Neptune also breaks down the internal boundary between conscious and unconscious, flooding or overwhelming our existing ego identity with contents from our conscious. If we have mainly identified ourselves as strong, confident, and capable, then under a Neptune transit to our sun, we could discover a confused, weak, or helpless side to our nature. Neptune is like a solvent, diluting the strength of a previously concentrated energy, whether this is carefully structured career plan or relationship, or a tenaciously held conviction or inner attitude towards ourselves or the world. Neptune undermines boundaries, whether those between ourselves and others or those between our egos and unconscious. I know I kind of went for a long read, but I couldn't stop. But I just want to say the boundary eroding effect of transiting Neptune can enhance our awareness of the oneness of all life and increase our empathy of feeling connectedness to everything else in existing. Grasping the concept of the essential unity of all life is not easy. It is more difficult for us in Western society who have been thoroughly inculcated to believe that I, in one place, end and you begin somewhere else. What Alan Alan Watts called the me in here versus you out there reality that Western culture has. However, both Eastern and Western mystics have always spoken of another dimension another dimension of reality in which nothing exists in isolation. Hear me out. Neptune has been in Pisces, its home, since 2011, 2012. A lot of us have been saying that the world has been different since then. Neptune is nearing the end degree, so we're getting way more intense. That 29 degree, what if there's no boundaries right now? What if there's none? You know how we're all feeling that like it's just a bizarro world. I'm having a hard time deciding if articles are true or if I've thought them up. Yesterday, I learned that there's a company called Oz. It's almost like they're playing with us because it's so obvious, but what if it's not that? What if worlds and planes of reality, what if there's no boundaries right now? What if this is the upside down? What if this is Bizarro world? What if we're dealing with Wario? I've talked a lot about how Saturn and Pisces, or the nodes in Pisces, can really show some delusions of like nationalism. Like that's when people tend to not be able to separate themselves from their country. And we are seeing that for sure. Pisces is the end. I do call it the amniotic fluid. It represents the 12th house. It's the end of the story. We are ending something, and I feel like Neptune has blurred all the boundaries, that there are none right now, that there is no distinction between that plane and this plane and that plane, you or I. I know this is woo, but I can't really explain it any other way. That is what I'm feeling. Like my sister said, we're like coming back in time. I think of astrology as waves. It feels like there's no boundaries between this time and the last time Neptune was in Pisces. Like it's all converging. All timelines are converging. Fascism, Soviet Union, China. It is all Africa. All the different timelines. I mean, we had someone on here ask for Denmark to buy us and colonize us, which I know was a joke, but also like it's not when you think of the fact what all has happened in history and how much we're getting waves and echoes of right now. Does anyone else feel like the spirit guides are loud, the ancestors are loud? That's just gonna get more loud the more the North Node moves into Pisces. And my sister is like, because they've been through this before. They're trying to help us. They're trying to tell us. Remember that other video when I was like, the veil is thin? What if there's just isn't one right now? So many of you I'm doing readings with are like waking the hell up with all of your abilities. I'm going to read more today. I've read this book before. This is one of my favorite books, The Gods of Change. In my dream last night, I just felt that there's just no boundaries. While that's terrifying, I think that gives me a different insight. What do you think, though? What do you think?